Dinosaurs should have made for endless blockbuster movies. Giant reptiles, whether it's Godzilla, Kaiju, or a T-Rex stomping around, are inherently cool. And yet, if we look at Hollywood today, true dinosaur movies have all but disappeared. Sure, they pop up here and there, but when was the last time a non-Jurassic Park film made a real splash? It's almost as if the entire genre went extinct after 1993. The irony is that the very movie that proved how amazing dinosaurs could look on screen, 1993's Jurassic Park, might have killed off the genre by setting an impossible standard. Spielberg's classic didn't just dominate our imaginations, it cast a long shadow that no other dinosaur film has escaped ever since. Despite how much we all love dinosaurs, the post-Jurassic Park landscape is a barren wasteland for dino movies. In this video, I want to dig up the bones of the genre's past, analyze how Jurassic Park changed everything, explore why dinosaur movies struggle to survive afterwards, and ask, could these movies be resurrected? It started with bones. The first dinosaur fossils were pulled from the ground in the 17th century before we even had a word for dinosaurs. But by the 19th century, they captured the public's imagination. How could they not, after all? These were massive, mysterious relics of a world that no longer existed. The 19th century was also the beginning of the Bone Wars, or the Great Dinosaur Rush. It was a period of intense and oftentimes hostile fossil hunting. The two leading figures were Othniel Charles Marsh and Edward Drinker Cope, both respected paleontologists. They were almost proto-Hammond-like figures, or at least the book version of Hammond. They would stoop as low as bribery, theft, and outright destruction of fossils in order to get ahead of each other. That itself is pretty cinematic, and the people certainly thought so. The discoveries and drama made dinosaurs front-page news. Museums proudly displayed enormous skeletons even when they weren't sure how all the bones fit together. The public didn't care. Dinosaurs were massive, they were strange, and they were spectacular. Early filmmakers took notice, and they were natural stars for a new kind of spectacle. In 1914, American audiences got their first taste of a dinosaur at the movies with D.W. Griffith's Brute Force, a short film about a caveman and dinosaurs. The shot itself is a slow pan right, revealing a dinosaur eating what looks like long grass. The cavemen then notice it, are startled, and reasonably scurry away. The same year saw Winsor McKay's Gertie the Dinosaur. It's an animated short, and the first that really put the emphasis on the dinosaurs. It was a landmark film that would influence Walt Disney, Woody Woodpecker critter Walter Lantz, and the Fleischer brothers. The New York Evening News called it, quote, the greatest act in the history of motion picture cartoonists, end quote. 1925 is when dinosaurs got supercharged. It began with The Lost World, adapted from Arthur Conan Doyle's book of the same name. It featured pioneering stop-motion special effects by Wallace O'Brien. He brought models of prehistoric beasts to life with resounding success, and for the time it was nothing short of a marvel, and you can see the inspiration it had on future movies. The ending, for example, is a brontosaurus rampaging through London. That would be King Kong less than a decade later. It would be Godzilla within a couple of decades, the T-Rex stomping through San Diego in more than 70 years, and virtually every other monster that wreaks havoc in a town or a city. O'Brien would refine his craft further with King Kong in 1933. Though Kong was the headliner, his battle with the T-Rex is still a pretty fun watch. It goes on for a couple of minutes. Remember that for stop motion, you take a picture of your models, pause to adjust them, and go back and take a picture, adjust them ever so slightly, take another picture, and you keep doing that hundreds, if not thousands of times. This was a painstaking endeavor, but it was well worth it. But from then on, improvements were incremental. O'Brien's stop-motion work was impressive and as fluid as it could be, but audiences were always aware of the illusion. The fascination with dinosaurs never wavered, but the technology remained limited. Instead, advances were made on the story side. The 1950s and 60s delivered a flood of monster and dinosaur movies, less driven by paleontological accuracy and more by Cold War and nuclear anxieties. Dinosaur movies began to blur more with the general giant monster movie. Radioactive creatures were created or awakened by nuclear tests and began to stomp through cities, a metaphor for the bomb. We saw this in movies like The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms in 1953, with stop-motion animation done by the legendary Ray Harryhausen. In it, a Rhedosaurus, thawed by nuclear testing in the Arctic and immune to contemporary artillery, rampages through New York. The inspiration from King Kong here was obvious. Ray Harryhausen also did impeccable stop-motion work on other dinosaur-related movies, such as 1 Million BC in 1966 and The Valley of Gwangi in 1969. The latter is a weird but cool Old West dinosaur mashup. To be sure, none of these movies were going for scientific accuracy. It was a fun outing and it looked marvelous. Harryhausen did painstaking research to make sure his dinosaurs moved believably, and the audiences rewarded him for it. It's inarguable that 1954's Godzilla, released in Japan, is the most famous and, dare I say, important of the giant monsters. It was created as a loose interpretation of a dinosaur and would become the ultimate metaphor for humanity's capacity for self-destruction. It's a thrilling film and one that moved beyond stop motion to using a guy dressed up as Godzilla. The movements are a bit stilted, yes, but still managed to capture the imagination, especially when Godzilla first appears and later when he attacks Japan. Still, all the work was obviously artificial. There was jitteriness in the stop-motion movements, the puppets, and the man in the suit. Miniature lighting never quite matched reality, and you can tell that models were being used, even in black and white pictures like Godzilla. The work was sophisticated for its time, but as audience tastes changed, the gap between technically impressive and convincingly real also widened. Most of these were campy and charming creature features, not necessarily high cinema. Dinosaur movies also thrived in animation. Kids love dinosaurs after all, and with cartoons they could become friendly companions or comic relief. Shows like the Flintstones turned them into living appliances, and everyone loved Barney, which first aired in 1992. Don Bluth's 1988 masterpiece, The Land Before Time, would raise the bar for dinosaurs. It's a touching, tragic film that's beautifully animated and resonated heavily with younger audiences. Still, there was a massive hole. Despite having been at it for decades and with movies that either had dinosaurs as the central stars or as cameos like The Land Unknown in 1957, The Giant Behemoth and The Journey into the Center of the Earth in 1959, The Lost World in 1960, It's Alive in 1969, When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth in 1970, The Land That Time Forgot in 1974, Planet of the Dinosaurs in 1977, and more, no one had quite cracked the code in making dinosaurs seem real or natural. They were everywhere in culture, but on the big screen, they remained stuck as either campy monsters, children's cartoons, or relics of a bygone era. The technology simply wasn't ready. We could imagine dinosaurs, we could approximate them, but we couldn't yet believe them. But starting in May of 1990, things were about to change. Within a few years, Jurassic Park would arrive on the scene and raise the bar so high that no one else would be able to reach it. The struggle to make dinosaurs feel real was, in fact, real. Stop-motion models and rubber suits got us close, but they never quite crossed the Rubicon. Audiences were patient and used their imagination to fill in the gaps. But everyone was waiting for that moment when the lines between reality and illusion would blur. In 1990, the spark arrived. It was Michael Crichton's novel Jurassic Park. He was inspired to write Jurassic Park because he saw dinosaurs everywhere he looked. From The Making of Jurassic Park by Don Shea, Crichton said, quote, "At the time, there was a great dinosaur mania in this country, and I felt that if I did something on dinosaurs, it would just be seen as part of a trend. I didn't particularly want that association, so I decided to wait. But the next year, there was still a dinosaur mania, and the year after that, it was still going strong, so finally I realized that it was always going to be here," end quote. He was a master at blending real science with speculative fiction. The premise of Jurassic Park wasn't just sci-fi, it was plausible sci-fi. DNA extraction from ancient mosquitoes, genetic engineering filling in the gaps, a theme park built on resurrected prehistoric animals. And why a theme park? Because this would be an expensive endeavor. It needed commercial backing. The concept grounded itself just enough in cutting-edge science to feel terrifyingly real. These weren't dinosaurs brought back by magic or vague sci-fi nonsense. This was science with rules, procedures, consequences. It was close enough to our world that you could imagine it happening within a decade or two. Steven Spielberg certainly saw that potential immediately. He secured the film rights in May 1990, beating out James Cameron, Richard Donner, Tim Burton, and others. And all of this before the book even hit shelves. For Spielberg, Jurassic Park offered the perfect canvas, a chance to blend his gift for wonder and amazement owned on films like E.T. with his mastery of suspense sharpened with Jaws. He drew inspiration from multiple sources. He said he, quote, was really just trying to make a good sequel to Jaws on land, end quote. He called 1933's King Kong the, quote, high watermark, end quote, for special effects. He said Godzilla, King of the Monsters was, quote, the most masterful of all the dinosaur movies because it made you believe it was really happening, end quote. And he said that the goal for Jurassic Park was to be, quote, the most realistic of them all, end quote. But the central challenge remained. How do you make the dinosaurs real? It was going to be a difficult but surmountable challenge. Spielberg also knew that it wasn't going to be easy, so he started working on Hook while his team began working on Jurassic Park. Two things were going to be necessary. One was a seamless merger between animatronics and new technology, CGI. The second was the people necessary to make that merger happen. To get that realistic look required a collaboration between a cadre of legends. Stan Winston, a legend in practical effects, and his team would build full-scale animatronic dinosaurs for close-up shots when you needed to get up close and personal with the dinosaurs. The most famous of these was Rexy, the T-Rex in the original movie that was 20 feet tall, 40 feet long, and weighed 9,000 pounds. Jack Horner, a paleontologist that consulted for the film, said it was, quote, "the closest I've ever been to a live dinosaur," unquote. The T-Rex that we see break free from the enclosure was Rexy herself. It being animatronic brought its own set of difficulties. The biggest was malfunctioning during rain sequences. Sometimes the T-Rex would come alive when no one expected it, and it scared the life out of everyone near it. But the troubles were sacrifices that Spielberg was willing to make. Stop motion, which is how dinosaur movies were done prior, would cheapen the look. He didn't want that entirely, but he figured that he might need it. CGI was available, but could it handle what he needed? So he proceeded thinking that stop motion could still be used for wide shots and scenes like the Stampede. For this, he brought in legendary visual effects supervisor Phil Tippett, who had worked on the Star Wars trilogy and RoboCop, as well as dinosaur-related films like Prehistoric Beast in 1984 and Dinosaur in 1985 as an animator. A movie this complex needed to be planned out, and Tippett and his team were the right people for the job. Tippett created animatics, or key scenes that he choreographed using small-scale models and traditional stop-motion photography. In Tippett's words, quote, "We took two major sequences in the film, one with the T-Rex and one with the raptors, and did quick sketch equivalents of the scenes in full miniature using stop-motion dinosaurs and very small puppet humans," end quote. Alas, the issue with the stop-motion still remained. It was jittery and cheapened the look despite using Phil Tippett's Go Motion variation, which introduced motion blur to make the movement smoother. In Tippett's words, quote, "Creating herds of animals with puppets would be very difficult, so I thought maybe that was something we might be able to do with computer graphics," end quote. All the while, to get the state-of-the-art special effects, Spielberg enlisted the help of Industrial Light and Magic, started by his friend George Lucas, almost 2 decades ago after he found out that Fox had shut down their special effects division as he was working on Star Wars. ILM delivered some masterful work a couple of years prior with James Cameron's Terminator 2. The CGI was overseen by Dennis Muren, another visual effects legend and a 9-time Academy Award winner. At this time, CGI was still in its infancy, and James Cameron's movies were probably the ones that were most cutting edge with it. But getting fully photorealistic animals was still uncharted territory. Still, ILM thought that they were up to the challenge. Or, at least, that's what Steve Williams, an animator at ILM, thought. In his words, quote, "All of us wanted a crack at the T-Rex, but we thought we could never get it because Stan was already in there, and so was Phil. But the attraction was strong, so I secretly started building some T-Rex bones in the computer," end quote. When Williams was able to show his work to Muren and the others, they were impressed. Steven Spielberg certainly was, as he decided to abandon the idea of using Go Motion entirely in favor of making the dinosaur CGI. But I think the person most impressed was Phil Tippett, who, on seeing the digital T-Rex, declared, quote, "I think I'm extinct," end quote. Spielberg thought that was a great line and decided to incorporate it into the movie. It was a delicate situation, to be sure. Tippett saw the writing on the wall. His expertise was about to be rendered useless. But Tippett, Muren, and Spielberg were pretty good friends. Tippett and Muren knew each other for years, and both knew that they could learn from each other. Not to mention, Tippett probably had the most expertise in dinosaur anatomy. They couldn't afford to lose his experience. Proving that he himself was not a dinosaur, he adapted and, despite not liking computers, worked closely with ILM, which used his animatics to choreograph key scenes. The production pivoted. Jurassic Park would become a fusion of practical and digital effects. Winston's animatronics would handle the close-ups. The breathing, the snarling jaws, the twitching and blinking, the movements when dinosaurs interacted with the actors. ILM CGI would take over for full body shots, chases, and the environmental sequences. And Tippett would supervise creature movements, ensuring that the digital dinosaurs behaved believably. Spielberg's direction, meanwhile, helped sell the illusion. He resisted the temptation to show off this new tech with constant effects. He restrained himself. It's telling that the first time that we see the dinosaur's full reveal is when Alan Grant and the others see it. The camera stayed low, rose slowly, and mirrored our perspective. We knew what the least informed characters knew. They were us in the movie. When the terror arrived, it was just as masterful. The T-Rex attack in the rain, a seamless blend of Winston's animatronics, ILM's digital shots, and Tippett's animal expertise, is one of the most suspenseful, terrifying sequences in film history. It was massive, dangerous, and real. To top it all off are the sounds, and I'm not just talking about John Williams' iconic score, which should have been nominated for an Academy Award. I'm talking about the sound and sound effects editing, both of which won Academy Awards. The crunching, the roar, the snarls, the hissing, and more. It all came together perfectly. When Jurassic Park hit theaters in 1993, it didn't just make bang. It redefined what it meant to be a successful movie, becoming the highest-grossing film ever at the time, dethroning E.T., the previous record holder. It wasn't just an American hit, but a worldwide hit, setting records in Brazil, the UK, India, Spain, South Korea, Germany, Mexico, and more. It made $914 million in its original run, with the re-releases pushing it over $1 billion. Critics mostly got it right, but as Henry Sheehan of Sight and Sound noted, quote, "The complaints over Jurassic Park's lack of story and character sound a little off the point," end quote. Caroline Westbrook of Empire was the most right, saying it was, quote, "quite simply one of the greatest blockbusters of all time," end quote. The cultural impact was swift as people left theaters obsessed with dinosaurs. Dinomania swept over the country as Jurassic Park heralded a revolution for movie making. It gave rise to the Jurassic Park generation, people that were inspired by the movie to pursue careers in either filmmaking or paleontology, which also saw increased funding. There were video games, clothes, and even McDonald's tie-ins. Dinosaurs were everywhere, except where it all began. This massive success had a strange consequence. It didn't usher in a golden age of dinosaur cinema. Rather, Jurassic Park quietly, successfully monopolized an entire genre. The problem was simple. Spielberg hadn't just made a great dinosaur film, he'd made the dinosaur film. The combination of groundbreaking effects, masterful directing, and global cultural dominance made it nearly impossible for anyone else to follow. It wasn't just a money thing either. Jurassic Park's $63 million budget was big but not extravagant. More difficult was getting the technical know-how and resources to achieve that realism. ILM could do it, but that was just about it for the time. Most importantly, the audience expectations had shifted overnight. Anything that looked remotely less believable would feel cheap, dated, or downright embarrassing by comparison. That's not to say that no one tried. Imitators abounded. There was Roger Corman's Carnosaur, which he got out just before Jurassic Park to capitalize on its success. There was 1994's Saurians, 1995's Carnosaur 2, 1997's Future War, 2000's Dinosaur, one of the few resounding successes, and Dinotopia, a miniseries that I quite enjoyed. Dinosaurs were also seen in 2005's King Kong, 2006's Night at the Museum, 2008's Journey to the Center of the Earth, 2009's The Land That Time Forgot, and others, but nothing, and I mean nothing, quite rose to the cream of the crop like Jurassic Park, except the Jurassic Park sequels. But even then, the mystery was gone. Jurassic Park 2 was eagerly anticipated and had a massive marketing budget, and while it made money, reviews were much worse and even Spielberg himself didn't like it. In his words, quote, "My sequels aren't as good as my originals because I go on to every sequel I've made and I'm too confident. This movie made $1 gazillion, which justifies the sequel, so I come in like it's going to be a slam dunk and I wind up making an inferior movie to the one before. I'm talking about The Lost World and Jurassic Park," end quote. Jurassic Park 3 did even worse. It's telling that the movies that came out before Jurassic Park, like Godzilla, King Kong, The Land Before Time, The Lost World, and The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, are the most memorable dinosaur or dinosaur-adjacent films. Instead of launching a wave of successful dinosaur films, Jurassic Park created a vacuum. Jaws ripoffs like Piranha and Grizzly, as well as direct inspirations like Alien, had much more success, but not the Jurassic Park imitators. The genre became so closely tied to that one film and to Spielberg's tone that every other dinosaur project was doomed to fail by comparison. As soon as somebody said dinosaur movie, they automatically thought of Jurassic Park. Even its sequels weren't good enough, even though they got a cachet that others didn't, and that people still watched them for the dinosaurs. If things were bad on the live-action front, they weren't much better in the animation or TV worlds either. The nature documentary miniseries, Walking with Dinosaurs, was a standout in that it was successful, nabbing 15 million British viewers. But shows like Terra Nova, which Spielberg produced, managed to last just a single season. The Land Before Time had one theatrical release and was then relegated to direct-to-video releases. Pixar's The Good Dinosaur in 2015 had a charm to it, but probably lost money at the box office. Jurassic Park was no longer just the gold standard, it was the only standard. It raised dinosaurs to mythological status, but also somehow managed to demystify them at the same time. There's a sense of wonder I feel when watching Jurassic Park that I don't get when watching any other newer dinosaur movies. It's not just the visuals, it's everything taken together. But even Jurassic World, despite its immense commercial success, doesn't capture the imagination as much as Jurassic Park did. These movies are remixes banking on nostalgia. Bigger park, bigger dinosaurs, more chaos, but smaller heart and lacking wonder. The dinosaurs look great, to be sure, but they don't inspire like Jurassic Park did. They're hollow. So far, there's no other dinosaur movie that shows even a semblance of challenging Jurassic Park for the throne. It's not even that audiences stopped loving dinosaurs. Far from it. Museums still draw millions. Dinosaur toys still fly off the shelves. Video games like Turok and Ark Survival Evolved, which sold more than 70 million copies, are successful. The fascination is still there. It's just in stasis at the movies, like a mosquito stuck in amber. The question is, could dinosaurs live again at the movies? Like I said, the fascination is still there. Always has been, always will be. You see it in museums as people pack in under towering skeletons, with games that sell by the tens of millions, with a frightening mixed reality experience from Apple, from theme park rides. Dinosaurs are baked into our culture, and while Jurassic Park carries a lot of that success on its shoulders, it shouldn't have to carry it alone. In fact, I think we've just scratched the surface of what's possible to depict with dinosaurs. There are entire genres waiting to be explored, and who knows what they could bring. Imagine a pure dinosaur horror film. Strip away the theme park, strip away the camp, and just a small group of stranded people hunted by a creature more terrifying than anything. The beginning to Godzilla -1 captures this really well, as a lithe, dinosaur-like Godzilla attacks Japanese soldiers on Odo Island. The shaky cam at the beginning adds to the terror as the spotlight falls on and then off the creature. Think if Alien and Jurassic Park had a baby. Imagine a fully photorealistic film that follows one dinosaur from hatching to extinction. No dialogue, no human characters. Just pure visual storytelling, guided by cutting-edge paleontology. A modern-day Walking with Dinosaurs, but with an emotional resonance. Hell, imagine a prestige drama about the Bone Wars. Real people, real stakes. The dinosaurs, at least in the flesh, never appear, but their fossils drive the ambition, the betrayal, and the obsession. A story where the monsters aren't prehistoric, they're human. You could also merge the prestige and sci-fi aspects and create a world where dinosaurs do exist, but their mere existence has religious, legal, and political implications. Are they property? Wildlife? Something else? What's the interplay between governments, corporations, and even eco-terrorists who want to see them run free, despite what the consequences may be? We could go hard sci-fi, asking not just whether we could bring them back, but whether or not we should. It could explore the ethical, ecological, and societal implications of such a discovery and its follow-through. It's the kind of story that treats cloning not as a theme park attraction, but as a profound moral crisis. You could do a spin where dinosaurs are brought back, but kept for military, pharmaceutical, or industrial purposes. The dinosaurs aren't just monsters, they're pawns in a dangerous human power struggle. You could even minimize actual dino screen time to heighten their presence through sound and implication. The material is there, we just need the risk and imagination. Dinosaur movies have stayed frozen for 30 years because Jurassic Park wasn't just a success, it was too successful. It became the default, the template that no one would dare deviate from. And with every sequel, every reboot, every nostalgia play, the amber prison only gets harder. But it doesn't need to. If Jurassic Park taught us anything, it's that life, finds a way. The next great dinosaur film won't be another Jurassic Park, it'll be something entirely different. It'll take risks. It'll see these creatures not through the lens of 1993, but through the lens of today, with all we've learned both scientifically and cinematically since then. Dinosaurs deserve another golden age on screen. They're still the ultimate movie monster, the ultimate symbols of both wonder and terror. They remind us of nature's power, of deep time, and of how small we really are. And somewhere out there is a filmmaker who's going to escape that amber prison and make a dinosaur film for a new age.